Thanks for coming this after lunch session. Got a lot of good food down there, so I'm glad everyone's not taking a nap right now. Here to see some more sessions here. This one is about accelerating AI-powered chatbots in Drupal to enhance user experiences. We got a lot of AI sessions this year, and I'm sure more to come in the future. So we just want to talk about some of the good things that we can do with AI-powered chatbots. So my name is Rob Morris. I'm the principal engineer, Drupal engineer at CTAC. Essentially, we're going to be talking about a tool that we developed to essentially help people create a responsible, production-grade Gen AI chatbot very, very quickly. So we say in under an hour, but that's because you will have to set up things on the other side for the chatbot to talk to. But from the Drupal side, essentially, it's a 5-minute process. So a very quick, easy, simple setup. And the whole purpose of this is really just to take some of the burden off of agencies and organizations. A lot of employees spend time answering the same questions over and over again to the public. The public takes a lot of time to search for items, here and there, but they can't find them. So this is essentially just one of the tools to help people navigate these complex websites that are very large. So the agenda, we'll just talk through really quickly. So we'll talk about why it matters, the overview of our solution, use cases, a quick demo, best practices, and then our conclusion with the Q&A. So we have a bunch to go through, so I'll be moving kind of quickly, but if there's any questions, you see me do something you don't like or you want to ask more about, just feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand, yell at me, and we can get your questions answered. All right, so let's hop into it. So why it matters. So essentially, expectations are shifting. So this is across the board. People don't want to search like we used to. We used to go to Google. We used to search. We would have a list of pages that we then have to go through and search again to find what we're looking for. Now, people are going to places like ChatGPT and other places that will just give you these answers, which is why Google said, hey, we got to give you this AI summary at the top. So now you search Google, you're going to see that summary at the top. And that's just what people want. They want to be able to receive their information in plain language without having to search and search and search for something simple that they're looking for. New policies are coming out all the time, executive orders, different mandates. So for government, this is really big. There was the Executive Order 14110, which was back in 2023. That was the big overarching pretty much mandate for government to start going with AI. And then, of course, these things change all the time. By 2025, that was rescinded. Then there was Executive Order 14179, which was the new big dog, essentially, for AI in government. The OMB memorandums coming out all the time. Back in the day, it was M2410. That was rescinded and replaced by M2521. And essentially, that was just saying federal government, federal agencies need to start pushing people to use AI. And then M2422 was essentially saying we need this AI to be responsible and efficient. So these mandates are happening all the time. There's a slew more of them, but essentially it is really the government pushing for AI to be very prevalent in the country. And just yesterday, I didn't see many people talking about it, but GSA launched usai.gov. So essentially it is to push agencies to be able to use different models to be able to interact with AI. So really it's just for them to get their feet wet. They want to build a widget. They now have the ability to set up API calls pointing to this thing, of course, after getting it registered with GSA. And just another thing, just pushing us forward in the government to be using AI. Another thing that this was done for are for some of the common pain points, which in government, I'm sure as a lot of us know, there are PDFs from decades old that no one ever goes to see, all sorts of content that's completely forgotten about. John Smith uploaded it 3 decades ago, he retired, nobody knows what it is. So people sometimes might want to know, hey, I have a question, it's not really current, but historical, I want to get an answer. It's hard to find on the website. So with a chatbot like this, you'd be able to essentially have access to all that information, and you'd be able to pull it up no matter where it is. And this would help for these very long web pages, long FAQs, and just overall help desk being sort of overrun with questions from users. And so just to hop into our overview of our solution, this is the AWS Bedrock Chat model that we created. It's a Drupal 10 and 11 contrib module, and essentially it's just a wrapper for AWS Bedrock that's just super, super easy to drop in, customize, and use. And not to knock any other AI chatbots or AI modules out there, this is just the one that we put together just to make it super easy out of the box. It's going to work with all of your knowledge-based queryable models, so your llamas, your Mistrals, your Claudes, and it's going to give you access to the RAG, which you might have heard, Retrieval Augmented Generation. And RAG is an amazing framework for AI. It essentially lets you enhance the output of your LLMs by exposing it to data that you already have. So your information is going to be knowledge bases that you might have, an uploads folder with gigabytes of stuff, or an S3 bucket, and it's just all this information from the past and it's spread out all over the place. Now you can take all that stuff one place and create a bot which is going to pull just from that data source. It also has agent support. This agent support is, I'm sure you know, agents are powerful tools in AI. It came out in ChatGPT recently. Essentially, they said as a game changer, since AIs are essentially almost like little task rabbits. You can have them do whatever you want. You can build your own agent at the top, have sub-agents under that, automating things to pretty much do anything that you do on the computer. And this is really great because then it frees you up to not have to do those same tasks or mundane activities. You can just automate it, let it go, get the results, and move on to things that are more pressing or more creative to push your agency or organizations forward. It has multilingual support, like a lot of the AIs do out there. So people speaking different languages, you're going to be able to just prompt in your language and get your response in kind. And it's built on top of AWS's PHP SDK, so we're not just stringing together spaghetti code to make these calls. It's actually using their actual calls, which is their signature v4 essentially protocol, which is going to make sure things are encrypted in transit and ensure that you're hitting the correct endpoints with API verification on every single request that you make. And so just a quick note about some of the differentiations between this and the AI modules Bedrock provider. So essentially we got started on this way back in the day before that even existed, but it is still in beta, and we have had some people a little hesitant to use a beta module in production websites. So then we say, hey, just use ours right out of the box. We've gotten people reaching out saying, hey, have you put together public-facing chatbots with AI module? It's a little complicated. And so essentially we say, yep, that's why we make it a 3-step process of downloading the module, installing, and placing the block, and you're pretty much ready to go. And for ours, it doesn't require maintaining multiple sub-modules. It's just one module packaging everything. So as we said, 5 minutes on the Drupal side, and you have an AI chatbot. And so just to talk about the architecture of this, essentially it starts at the Drupal side, takes in the input from the user, passes it off to Bedrock, which is the AWS's sort of AI engine. It can use various different models, so it just passes it through there, and then it will pass it through AI's guardrails. Guardrails are just a way to sort of limit what the users can do, kind of boxing them in so they're not asking for all sorts of crazy things or getting crazy responses. It's kind of just a way to put little security implementations in place for them. And then for our example here, what we're using is OpenSearch at the end. So that's our vector storage, which takes all of your information from your files and your knowledge base, crunches it down, and creates that vector store in OpenSearch. And then it goes back down the line, back through the guardrails to make sure that things coming back are properly sanitized. No PII that you've told it not to give, or no social security numbers, or you could have FOIAs that maybe are exempt and they shouldn't be coming back to the user. This can detect that, say, hey, I don't want to send this back, and it will not continue down the line. Then it goes back through the final processing through Bedrock, which is our last step before back to Drupal with your output. So a quick up and downstream, but it does a whole lot of things as it goes. So a lot of security things just to mention. Stateful data is not going to sit there. It's no one's going to be able to look and say, hey, this person asked these things, checking out your PHP sessions. It can run in GovCloud, so it will be in a FedRAMP partition if you do choose to do it there. As I mentioned, SIG v4, which is AWS's signature v4 protocol, making sure everything's encrypted. And the Guardrails, as we talked about, lets you do all sorts of things, PII, blocking topics, content filtering, etc. And this is going to align with TIC 3.0, which is the Trusted Internet Connections put out by CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And they pretty much just kind of do outlining of security patterns and protocols that agencies want to use when they're working with cloud providers and partners. So a lot of good stuff that you're ready to get out of the box. This is on the AWS side, but of course, if you're using other providers, they will most likely have something similar, but maybe not specific like AWS's GovCloud. That's FedRAMP. You just have to check on that with your specific provider that you're using. So now just a couple use cases that we came up with. So GSA, the General Services Administration, they do a whole lot of things for federal employees with per diems. So if you're traveling somewhere, you're going to get some food, a hotel, renting a car, you're going to be hitting this website all the time to see how much can you spend. With something like an AI chatbot, you could just put your whole itinerary in there, get a breakdown of where you're going, the prices, etc., because it'll just be able to look that up for you. GSA also does a lot of things with contracts. So people looking to work with the government, have these long, complicated contracts, and maybe there's some clauses in there that you don't really understand. With an AI chatbot like this, you'd be able to essentially take those contracts, kind of break it down, and get something like a clause explainer to kind of do it in sort of plain language of what exactly is being asked of you or required of you based on these contracts. CPSC, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, they do a lot of things with safety hazards for the American public, different consumer goods that have recalls. So you could come here and say, hey, I have this product or this list of products. Have these things been recalled? I'm looking to, do some fireworks with the kids in a place where it's legally allowed. What are the hazards? I'm going to get a swimming pool, new vacuum, whatever you want. This is a great agency to see if something has been recalled or has potential safety hazards. So a chatbot could essentially just give you that information very quickly. IRS, as we know, tax season, when that comes, there's often a lot of questions. There's a lot of services out there that kind of makes it easy for you, but if you have a specific situation, it can get very complex. So a chatbot could break down all those tough to understand little nuances of the tax codes for you. And then we've got veteran affairs. So veterans always inquiring about their benefits to try to see what am I entitled to, when can I get these benefits, and sometimes talk with the chatbot. They might not be happy. And with a chatbot, you could essentially detect what kind of tone they have. So you say, oh, this person's not happy. Maybe I want to pass them off to a service that can help them, such as the Veterans Crisis Hotline, if needed. So just something that an AI chatbot could do versus how it used to be with just canned responses to queries that people were making. So those are just some things on the federal level. Same thing with the state, all sorts of use cases for it. You could have 24/7 librarians, available to you. You're thinking about a book, you can't quite remember the name of it, describe the book, find if they have it, go pick it up tomorrow, Health, Medicaid agencies, unemployment offices, DMVs, a lot of paperwork, filing for benefits, registration renewals, claims, a whole lot of things that people kind of just go crazy with. This can break down, maybe what you're missing, what you need to bring to your appointment, the things that would be that what agencies would have to sort of field when you get there. You'd be able to know these things ahead of time. And so essentially, even though this is a public-facing chatbot, it still can be used internally. So you can limit it to certain information, and you could say, hey, I want people in my organizations to use this for data quality checks before they put things out there, or just kind of sanity checks on what they think they're going to say to the person, if that aligns with the policies or the things that your agency is essentially doing. And this really will help reduce the overhead for a lot of help desks, because a lot of hotlines for agencies get all sorts of calls for all sorts of reasons from the public, and often they are the same questions and answers, and this can essentially cut down on the need for all of that. So, even though all this sounds really good, what does this look like? So we will just hop into our demo here. So as I mentioned, this is the AWS Bedrock Chat. It's running for Drupal 10 and 11, so feel free if you want to check it out. It's just AWS Bedrock Chat. Come here, check it out, view the source code, star the repo if you'd like, ask questions, whatever you'd like. It's right here, available, easy to install and use. Of course, use Composer or however you'd like to install it. And then once you get it going, it's just as simple as enabling the module. So we've already got it enabled here. So it's just a quick enable. Don't mind this, need to do some upgrades. So a quick enabling of the module there. Once you do that, essentially it's just configuring it and dropping in the block. So the block is just an AWS Bedrock Chat block, so you can place it as soon as you have enabled this module. There's nothing else to be done with that block. And then you just configure it to point to wherever your knowledge base or your agent lies. So in this example here, we've just dropped it in our footer, which allows us to have a little icon that pops up in the footer. And then we've configured it to point out to a AWS knowledge base. So for this example, we're using just a Claude model. There's a list of models that you can use, and we're just pointing it to a specific ID in a specific region. The module right now has the ability to use the AWS profile. You can use and access secret keys. Of course, we do not recommend doing that for production websites, but of course if you're doing this for development purposes, just want to try it out, we do allow that. And for this demo here, just some environment variables that essentially are loading our authentication methods for AWS's connection. So now, I guess even though this is the Drupal setup, this could be done in 5 minutes. The real work on the AI really is on the other side. Sorry, I got a question?
You have the search type called hybrid. Can you tell me what exactly the meaning for the hybrid?
Yeah, so essentially the hybrid is a mix of searches. So it's really, they have two different ones. It's hybrid and semantic. I wish I could tell you more about the semantic one and how that specifically works, but essentially this is the one that they recommended to use to get the, most bang for your buck.
Yes.
Yes.
And what is a AWS knowledge base?
A knowledge base, yep, so that's what we're going to talk about right now. So that's essentially the sort of all of your files in one place. So if you've got your website, you've got lots of uploads that you've done, public files that are available. It can be something that sort of centralizes all of them and creates a vector storage where you can just ask it questions. So that's what this is right here. Hop into the AWS side. So we'll just show this really quickly because we're really concerned about the Drupal side, but just so you know. So this is the knowledge base. So we're pointing to this ID here, and that's really all we're pointing to from the configuration to make that link. We can use this particular ID because we have authenticated with our credentials for our account. If anyone else came and tried to use my ID here, it would say, sorry, you don't have access because you do not have access to my account. So this knowledge base is essentially just taking a bunch of files. So we click into it here. Our data source is just files. So we just dropped a bunch of files in here just for demo purposes. So just a few public-facing files. You can go to the, this is based off the Consumer Product Safety Commission. So you can go to their website, download all these. These are all public-facing files. You can scrape the site, build a local copy if you want, see how it works. But of course, you want to use your own files for this. So really, it's just pointing to some place where there are a bunch of files to sort of put them together. And with those, essentially, it creates an embedding. For here, this one, we're using Amazon's Titan Text embeddings, V2. And essentially, that's what's lying in the OpenSearch serverless vector storage. And of course, there's other storages, but that's what we're using here. Yes?
So for this knowledge base, can you base it off your Google content, or has it got to live in AWS?
So you could point it really wherever your files are, I'm pretty sure, as long as it's available for it to grab. So because you have a knowledge base, which essentially is going to work for files, but if you're talking about say like HTML or pages like your website, that's where you want to go to an agent. And an agent, you'd be able to say, go to my website, go look at these pages, pull these links and build something off of that. So you could do essentially either or, but the knowledge base is generally just flat files. And so with our knowledge base, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure we box our users in. So we have guardrails. Guardrails just make sure they don't do something that you don't want them to do. So essentially, if the user asks you to do something, if you have a guardrail set up that says, you cannot do this, the user would not be able to override this. So very simple to do. This is the AWS version, and I'm sure Google and everyone else has their own version of it. You just create your guardrail. You can give it content filters, denied topics, words, or sensitive information that you want filtered out. Reasoning checks to make sure things aren't going to hallucinate on you. So just things to make sure that the user is going to have a good experience and not see anything that they wouldn't want them to see. And this is really important because AI can essentially take you anywhere. So you want to make sure that it's essentially focused on what you want the users to know and see. And then, as I mentioned, the other part of this would be agent. So we just created a quick little test agent, and this agent is pointing to our knowledge base. Of course, you could have it do other things. You could have it, perform tasks, go to separate websites, hit other APIs, download, CSVs, and then do things with it. But for this version here, we just have it specifically going to our knowledge base that we mentioned before. And then with our knowledge base here, we just have it do some specific things. So we say, you're a helpful, friendly chatbot agent. You'll take questions and essentially do things. The agent will have their own models. This is running Claude 3.5 Sonnet, whereas the knowledge base, which we saw we were pointing to, was a Claude V2 RAG, essentially. So this is just a quick little run through of the AWS side, because we want to see the Drupal side and how this all really works. And of course, if there's any additional questions on that, feel free to ask me, or you can follow at the end.
So you mentioned the knowledge base using that the link, S3 bucket link, right?
Yes.
The knowledge base. But integrating with the Drupal, the knowledge base basically the Drupal data is.
No, not the database. It would be the files. So, because the database is going to be like your content that you've created,
Right.
but the knowledge base would really be the uploaded files, so like your PDFs, your Word docs, even your images. That's really what's going to be contained in that knowledge base.
So if all the files, including HTML, is in S3 bucket, so we can, instead of specifically saying each individual files, can we specifically call, okay, I want to go in the folder, look for all the files, not just specific file type.
So you're saying to limit it to a specific one, or
Not
specific?
limiting to the specific file, just to go to the folder, look for all the file types.
Yeah. So that's essentially what it does. It's going to go through everything. So you can limit it, but by default, it's going to be everything.
Okay.
All right, and so we'll just hop into how this all comes together. So this is our knowledge base here. As I mentioned, all we did was enable the module, we placed the block, and then we put in our configuration to point to our knowledge base. I mentioned we're just using a public information from Consumer Product Safety Commission, so anyone can build this little static site, or not static, but little site, pull down that information and use it the same way. So if we were to come click here and say, tell me about CPSC, all of these things are done in real time. There's no canned responses. It goes out, to our knowledge base using the model we tell it to use, and then it pulls this information. It tells us the U.S. Product Safety Commission, or Consumer Product Safety Commission, independent federal regulatory agency, created in 1972 by the Consumer Product Safety Act. So it gives us information about it, jurisdiction, and a little bit more. But we are a government website here. So people say, where does this information come from? Because this sounds good, it's very general, I could probably find that on Google. I want to know how you got this information. So we built in a way to point to these files. So essentially any related files that come up, you can say, let me point to this, let me exclude any duplicates. That way the user would be able to see exactly where this is coming from. And since we are making a chat for users to use, we want to make sure, it kind of flows with the site. So let's give it a little icon. So we have customizations here, so we can customize pretty much anything with the chat, from the colors, the messages, the windows, everything with the chat, the size, it can all be customized here. So I pretty much just told it to have a response icon and a toggle icon and to show our files. So we'll just go ahead and save that. So this is our original one here. So it looks like it's slow to load our images over the Wi-Fi here. There it goes. But essentially we can see in the bottom right, we have a new icon. This was our original one, and now we have a new one. And we click into it. Hi, how can I assist you? Or how can we assist you today? And we see we have a response icon which mimics the agency logo for this particular website. So just something for the look and feel for it to seem like this chat actually goes with this particular website. Yes?
Are you able to pull the data that's getting input on all the prompts so you can use that as feedback?
Actually, that's something we're going to discuss. So really, through the module, we're not capturing anything because we don't want anything lingering in the system. But on the other side of it, you could set up things to, depending on your organization's data policies, maybe take anonymous user data. So at AWS, you can use something like CloudWatch, type all of the prompts coming through to there, and then you'll have something that you can export to a CSV, load through, whatever you have to crunch your data to be able to see what the users are asking. Yeah, and of course, all the other services are going to have something similar to that. All right, so now we see that we've got our, hi, how can we assist you today? We've got our icon, so we can ask it the same thing. Tell me about CPSC. So just like last time, goes back out. We've got a little spinning Ajax here. You can customize it to whatever you want. And now it tells us our answer. And of course, now we see something a little different. It's got in the bottom here a link to the related files. So we just clicked on that. And we see it is a document, which is where this information came from. So essentially, it's just the basics of the agency. So most of what we've seen is right here, which talks about what the agency is, their jurisdiction, etc. So now users are able to see exactly where this information is coming from. If there were multiple sources that this pulled from to find information, it would list those out as well. So this we just asked it if there's something very general about the agency. So if we wanted something more specific about maybe something going on, I know it's a little bit late for 4th of July, but in case we want to know for next year and you're in a place where you can use fireworks, you could ask it, tell me about fireworks safety, because it's something that CPSC just did last month as one of their sort of initiatives. So essentially it came back about some key points about fireworks safety, should only be used by older children with close adult supervision, younger children should not be allowed to play with it, and now it pulled from more than one file, so we can see that there's 2 files here. And as I mentioned and showed before, this is just a very small set of data that we had in here. So these are not the latest and greatest fact sheets that they have, because I'm sure there's more current ones, but we just dropped a few in a bucket just to show you a quick demo, just to show you how this can be done, very quickly out of the box to get users to see information and point them to the authoritative source of where it came from. All right. And now that we've seen that, another thing that we mentioned was multilingual support. A lot of people who come to our websites don't just speak English, they speak other languages. I only speak English, so I need help from Google to do any translations. So if I'm going to go Spanish or English to Spanish, so tell me about safety hazards of pools. So pool safety is something that CPSC also does. So we'll just take the Spanish, we'll come back, put it in here. So even though we've been talking to this in English the whole time, we're now going to switch to a different language. It's going to automatically detect that and give us a response in kind. So it's a list here, it's a couple PDFs which are relevant to where it pulled from. So it looks like it's pool related. I guess Piscina Segura, I believe it's safe pooling. I can't remember, my high school Spanish teacher would not be happy with me, but essentially we can copy this, come back just to verify, and we can see that pool safety risks include drowning, especially among children. Always important to supervise children around water, etc. So it's able to pick up any languages, any characters, Chinese characters or any characters you give it, it's going to be able to pick it up and give you your responses in kind, essentially opening up your ability to give answers to other users who you might not have been able to do that for in the past. So this was just a quick run through of our knowledge base, pulling that information from our knowledge store. So we can just hop back over here. And I guess before we do, maybe I'll just show you one other little thing that's in here. Even though we've been using this English text here, then switch to Spanish, it can detect languages. So here is a Spanish page. If we come down here, we click on this, we see the prompts are different. So instead of having the "Hi, how can we help you?" It has the Spanish equivalent of that, and that's just a configuration that we have in the Translate tab. It just detects anything that's enabled on your Drupal site, any language, and gives you the ability to override those initial prompts. So now, if we hop over to our agent, so we've got an agent already set up, so we'll just point it out to the agent that I showed before, and we will ask it something similar to what we did. Tell me about CPSC. And while it's doing that, we'll come over to the agent builder really quickly. So essentially, agent, we can give it instructions to tell it to do specific things. It's got its own model, which it can, essentially run with, and we can point it to, as we mentioned before, knowledge bases. So if we have, 20 different knowledge bases, we could create an agent to point to one or all 20, and we can say we want this particular agent to run on, this particular site because it's relevant to, whatever information is in those knowledge bases. We've left the orchestration strategy most of the same, and this is where you can do some of the more specific overrides of what your agent is going to do, the responses in the knowledge base, and actually let's just hop back over here and see, whoa, so this is very different than what we had before. We asked it the same question, tell me about CPSC, now it is pretty much a salesman for the agency. Thank you, oh my gosh, thank you for asking about the CPSC, I'm beyond thrilled to share this incredible information with you. So emojis everywhere, it's very happy, it's very excited, it loves the agency. So what's different? The difference here is this agency has, this agent has been told to act a certain way. And we can see here, you are the most excited, over-the-top, joyous chatbot ever. So that's what we see. We see all sorts of, information, but also in a certain way that is based off of how we have prompted it to act. So it's a very powerful tool to use, especially if you have a website where you've got different audiences. You can cater the tone to those audiences. People speak in a certain way, or certain jargon. You want to talk to give information that might have younger kids versus older adults. You might have it speak in different tones. So if I were to ask it something more specific instead of something general, what was CPSC's budget for, let's say, July 2024? So it'll go off and do the same thing, and I guess if you want to see more of the prompts here, essentially we told it to use caps for words that express joy, exclamation points. So these are the type of things that you want to give your models or agents to essentially have them act in a certain way. You want to tell it, examples of how it should respond, tones of how to be. So this is very excessive. We just wanted you to see that there's a stark difference between the knowledge base giving you the information back and the agent where we can instruct it to be or act a certain way. And so for a government website, this might not be the thing that we want to use since it's a little excessive, but just wanted to show you that you could do this and how that essentially could go. So if we come back over here, hold on to your hats, because the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, they requested a whopping 212.6 million for fiscal year 2024. So a lot of information here, a lot of excitedness, a lot of text, but essentially, giving us the answer that we're looking for. For a lot of government websites, it's going to be just using the knowledge base, since, a lot of that is extra fluff. But of course, you can tell it to act in however you want. You can say to give you the answer, but then, say it in a certain way, which might, work best for your needs. So we just did a quick switch back to the knowledge base. So we'll come back to our tab and we'll just ask the same thing again, just so you can see the stark difference between the two. Of course, it goes back out through the AWS SIG v4, hits the endpoint, comes back with a much more concise answer. And of course, we can go and see our document, where it came from. This is the difference between a few words versus a whole paragraph. Some people might want more over there, another. But it really is about your audience. Audience can be the difference for your website's being successful or not, or your chatbot being successful or not. For the holidays, I go home, I see my nieces and nephews. They're teenagers, and they have interesting jargon these days. Something is mid, or someone is being sus, or that guy's got Riz no cap. And I go, might have to look that up, and see what they really mean. My parents will hear them. They will kind of just smile, leave, and then assume that they're all failing English. They don't know what's going on. So your audience really is something that really matters when you're dictating the tone, because you want to make sure you're not alienating or excluding people because you're talking or responding in ways that they might not understand or that might not resonate with them. So this was really just a quick run through of how you could just set up a quick little chatbot, and just a demo how it can drop a block on here, point to a knowledge-based agent, and get back some good information. So I'll just hop back over here. And just to recap, what I just showed you was really quickly was just a little bit of the AWS side, but of course if you're using Google or whatever your provider is, you're going to have something similar. So we had a knowledge base that we set up, we had an agent which was pointing to our knowledge base, and then we gave it some other instructions to make it a little bit more flavorful, and then we talked about our guardrails, which essentially keep the users inside these certain boxes that they cannot break out of. The Drupal module side, we ran through the setup for the configuration, knowledge base, agent, the little customizations, the multilingual support. These are all things that, just out of the box, very easy to set up, just because we really want people to start using AI, and sometimes they say it's hard to really get these things to work, so we want them to get their foot in the door, and then if they want to go off and use other things after that, great, but just start using it, see what it can do for you, and go from there. And so now that we've seen all that, we'll just talk a little bit about some of the best practices, and this goes for anything you're doing, any chatbot. It doesn't have to be AWS, doesn't have to be Drupal, just in general. Data curation is always going to be model size. So you could have some large, extravagant models, 100 billion parameters. They're going to do the best that they can with the information that you're giving it and what it can find. But having the cleanest data, the best structured data, things with metadata or tagged appropriately, that's going to make the difference. You're going to get the best responses, and your users are going to have the best experiences from that. So you always want to make sure, if you can, the best way to go about it is making sure you have clean, structured data. But of course, sometimes we cannot control that, and that's where the models come in to interpret it and help us out. Explicit system prompts are always essentially going to be better for efficiency and guardrails. So essentially what I showed, the guardrails of showing you the different filters that you can put in, as well as even the instructions that we put in there for how the model should act. Those are kind of like system prompts. That stuff's going to override anything the user can do. So the user is just one level down. It's going to send you information. Hey, tell me this. I want to know about this. But then your system prompts are at a higher level that will always override anything the user can tell you or send to you, and as well as the guardrails. They're essentially on a different level. And that's one of the things in the next update that's coming out very shortly, is that from the Drupal side, you're going to be able to set system prompts as well. So you don't have to go into the AWS side to dictate some instructions that you want to have for your agents. Observe and iterate, so that's essentially what we talked about before with taking some of the logs from users depending on your organization's data policies. You can have CloudWatch for AWS or whatever you're using. Essentially keeping these logs, usually you want to use anonymous data, and that will essentially allow you to just have a wealth of information about what your users are asking about, what their pain points are, why are they talking to your chatbot instead of going to see the content. And if you see enough of this, same questions coming in, 50 people have a headache because they can't find this, that was a question yesterday, that's now a content update for today. Because now you can put it front and center when they come to your website, no more problems because they can see it right off the bat. So it's very important to take that, essentially, if you can, data and iterate on it to help your content be better for your users. And then finally, role-based access to specific agents. You're going to make sure that your agents are under control from the side of the AI, so in this case AWS, the least privilege principle. You're going to make sure no one's going to have access to use or be able to construct these things off your knowledge bases, outside of your sort of realm. And then also from the Drupal side, what we're going to drop in the next update as well is, instead of just one configuration for the chatbot, it's going to be each individual block is going to have its own configuration. So you can have multiple agents or knowledge bases all throughout your website. So if your website has one particular section that talks about cats, you can have your agent meow when someone asks you a question. You can have it do whatever you want, or you can have it work internally where you've got public-facing chatbots, but then you also have internal-facing chatbots for your authenticated users. They can come here, they can say, hey, I'm not sure about the policies of our agency about XYZ. It can give them some guidance based off of some maybe internal information that would not be something that the public would have access to based on their rule. And then just a quick note on screen compliance. We talked about the guardrails, PII scanning, multi-language filters. It meets most of the OMB memorandums and executive orders already for responsible AI requirements. So it does a lot out of the box. And then they even have an advanced tier, which is going to do even more. You're going to be able to set regex patterns. You're going to be able to, essentially go a little bit further with these guardrails. And then, as I mentioned, everything in GovCloud would be able to be FedRAMPed and following the FIPS 142, which is essentially the endpoints, are going to be secure. The FIPS is essentially put out by NIST. And essentially, the 142 standard is just something that's saying that your data in transit is going to be encrypted. It's going to be using algorithms for cryptographic models that are essentially to a standard that it meets or exceeds the U.S. government's, what you can do in government with these. So it's going to be great out of the box if you're using like AWS, but of course you have to check for whatever you're using if you're using something different out of GovCloud. And then just the last thing on the roadmap here, as I mentioned, system prompts are going to be coming in. We're going to have full-page chat interfaces, so if you don't just want a pop-up that comes up when you click on something, you can have a full page for it, almost just like a search page, but just essentially just information coming back. I mentioned the individual knowledge base and agents for each individual block. And then our third-party integration with Deep Chat. So if you want to do some customizations yourself with, overriding the JavaScript, Deep Chat is, very great for that. So we will have that in very shortly. So feel free to check us out. As I mentioned, AWS Bedrock Chat. Star the module, the repo. Reach out to us. And of course, channels we love on the Drupal Slack are the AI and the AI Initiative channels. You'll usually find us hanging out in there. And just to wrap it up, I'd just like to say that, AI has been something that is huge in this GovCon and will, I'm sure in the future, continue to be huge. It is probably the most prevalent, two-letter acronym used today. But the whole point of AI, just like all the other things in the past for government, cloud, .com, all these things are great, but they all have to lead to the three-letter acronym that is tried and true, and that's ROI, because the return on investment is what really matters. And that could be from just the success of your website leading to accolades or leading to more investment or money, or it could just be the time that you free up your smart thinkers. They're able to focus on what's really important because they're not having to do those same mundane tasks over and over again or answer the same questions for the public. They're able to think about the future of your agency or organization and kind of push you forward, because that's really what the innovation and organization essentially is around, moving forward. And that is it. Any questions that we can answer? Yes.
So I feel like this could potentially solve a problem where you would want to implement something like Apache Solar to capture a bunch of tens of thousands of agency PDF documents, for example, that I know agencies, their users want to be able to search their content within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And but that's kind of costly. So I guess two questions: does this solve that gap or fill that gap? And then what would the cost, comparison be to something like Apache Solar?
Well, I guess I couldn't tell you about the specific Apache Solar costs. I know versus on the AWS side, we use OCRing through Textract. I know it's much cheaper than that, but of course it's based on the number of documents, the length of documents. I couldn't tell you specifically, unfortunately. You'd have to build out based off of your information, but I know it's cheaper than the historical methods that we have used. We use the OCR data, put it in, Solar or wherever else we're using point search API to it to make things searchable, and this essentially was much cheaper than that. Any other questions? Yes.
I was just curious, can you talk more about why you kind of decided to do your own integration into AWS Bedrock as opposed to using the AI provider?
Sure.
integration?
Yeah, so I guess when we originally started, there was no AWS Bedrocks. We used AWS in our company, and know a lot of people do. So this was a while back before they even got started. And essentially, people, even when the AI module started going and people started using it, we had a lot of people essentially saying they had issues with it. It was hard for them to set up a module and then set up another module to work with it and then try to configure it to make a public-facing chat. A lot of people got to the point where they were frustrated because they got as far as making a chat working, but it was only the internal one for the back-end content editors, and it was very hard. And essentially, we just wanted to make sure that there was a very low barrier for entry for people to get into AI. So even though the AI module is the one for the ecosystem, and I'm not saying not to use that at all, I'm just saying we just want to make sure that it's easy for people to see what you can do with AI. So even if they come, they use it for an hour and say, oh my goodness, this is great, now we need to go get someone to understand how the AI module might even build upon this, which is perfectly fine. We just want them to get into AI, essentially. Any other questions?
So for that chatbots, right?
Mhm.
If a user or multiple users ask the same question, is there a chance they're going to get different answers? Not in the same words, but like.
Yep, there's always a chance because AI is certain, but that's where your prompts and your guardrails sort of come in to essentially limit those hallucinations. So they'll 99% of the time they're going to get the same answer, maybe not the same exact words, but they're going to get the same information. But the more you essentially can see what's going wrong with the gaps, you can tell it, hey, act in this way. Always double check with these documents here before you say X, Y, Z. So the more you tell it explicitly, the less chance of that happening.
Is there a way we can track what's it's answering?
Yes, so that would be on the AI side of it, because we don't want to store anything on the Drupal side because then people would go and look at it. So depending on your service that you're using, I mentioned in AWS, there's CloudWatch. Essentially, they can keep a log of every single prompt that comes through, every single response that comes out. You can tie them together, export in CSV or whatever method you want, or Python to whatever big data analysis that you have, and kind of go from there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If it's a sync,
So,
go ahead.
yeah,
So it's
just
a
tacking on to what the gentleman here in the yellow shirt was saying, in terms of guardrails, what have you implemented to help prevent some of those hallucinations, as an example?
I guess we specifically haven't implemented any because we're not running it in a production environment, but essentially the advanced tier of guardrails, essentially they have tools that would help you sort of lessen those hallucinations. They have sort of sanity checks that they allow you to kind of run through a little bit further, so it's not just like the fastest answer, how ChatGPT might have given you the 1 second answer versus the now it thinks a little bit more to make sure it's less crazy, essentially.
Yeah, the same question on the same session. Is that going to create a new token, or it's going to be using from that session memory to return the response?
In terms of you mean
Same questions.
the same questions, you're saying it's going to be like extra additional tokens to process that?
Right.
Yeah, it most likely would be because it's a different question. It's not stored or anything, so it's a completely separate query, even though it's asking the same thing.
I saw that actually there's in your setting on that AWS, there's a session. What does that mean actually? That's kind of, if you have something happening within the same session, it's not going to create a new token, or even though if you have the session variable set up in the AWS, it's going to create a new.
Yeah, so that would be a token essentially to say you have a unique session versus a token for the AI, because you're going to the AI is going to use tokens, it's going to tokenize what you're saying to process it. So every time you ask something, it's going to use tokens to give you that response versus a session token, which is just saying your session token 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I know when I'm talking to you, we've had this conversation that we're continuing.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
AWS related question. So you set up that knowledge base and you're dropping all those files in there. I'm assuming everybody has a PDF prompt in here. Once you do that initial, I'm going to call it crawl, all of that. If you're updating the new version of the file, or essentially the same thing, how fast is it actually crawling and integrating that information back into like the chatbots.
Yep, so you can set it to sync, or you can manually kick off a resync, and it will just take the change file. So if you've got 250,000 files, you just added 5, it's only going to just take those 5, or if you change 10, it's only going to take those, resync them in, and it's pretty quick.
So that upper limit, you said 250,000.
Okay, that was just an example of something we did, but
it does get into that realm where you can have that much data. And are you paying for EC2 instance on that, or is it just?
nope, it's just the files, but you would be paying for the OpenSearch vector storage, because that's where it's going to be stored. So not in an EC2, but essentially some sort of vector storage. We use OpenSearch. All right, so I know we're just a little over on time. Thank you, everyone, for coming and listening. Really appreciate it.